Hello, and welcome back to Ask Zillow Anything, presented by Betterment, our multi-part series on the financial preparations and processes you'll need to learn in order to best buy, renovate, or sell a home. I've been searching for a home on Zillow, and I found one that I absolutely love. But now I'm starting to wonder what it would actually take to get into a home like this. Let's find out. Whoa! This place is awesome. But it's not quite my style. I should put a picture right here. And a big screen TV, that will look great right here. Okay, I'm definitely going to need some furniture, but I wonder how much that'll cost. Which brings me to today's episode. But before we get started, I could probably borrow a couch. So the unfortunate truth is that surprise extra cost or unexpected fees are all too common. The good news is that when it comes to buying a home, you can be ready for these hidden costs. Because today, we're going to discuss the upfront and ongoing expenses you can expect to encounter when purchasing a home. So let's learn how to protect your wallet and your stress levels from the sticker shock of a new home. Zillow Premier Agent partners are on the front lines setting expectations about expenses with buyers and sellers. Day in and day out, they help customers close on the right home for them. So we invited a Zillow Premier Agent partner to take us through exactly what you need to know about these costs. Hey, Beck, can you introduce yourself for our audience?
Hi, Julia. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today. I'm Vic DeCaro with Vic DeCaro & Associates of eXp Realty, and I've been in real estate for 21 years.
Thanks for joining us. So what is a list price versus sales price?
Sure. The difference between a list price and a sales price is that the list price is what sellers are trying to sell the home for. It's the price that they pick to market the home at. And the sales price is ultimately what the home sells for based on demand for the property. And then there's additional cost that is associated with it.
Let's build on that. In the event everything goes according to plan, the list price will help you determine your down payment amount if you're expecting to finance a home, which can be as low as 3% of the sale price with the exception of some VA and USDA loans.
When you're purchasing a home, the lender is going to be funding you a certain amount of money, and the down payment is what you would come up to the table with, and it could range from 3% to 20%. Some people put more than that. But in addition to that, there's something called an earnest deposit that you put down in good faith when you first submit your offer. Okay, Beck, can you explain what earnest money is and why that figure might change? So the earnest deposit is basically the buyer saying that I'm here to play for keeps. Usually it's 1% to 2% of the offer price. And that earnest deposit is held in escrow, and it protects the seller in the case that if the buyer doesn't perform to the contract, that they could lose that earnest deposit.
These are all costs that you can and should expect, but what about the surprise ones that catch buyers off guard?
There's a lot of costs that could potentially come up from the time that a buyer puts in an offer that sometimes can surprise some buyers. Those things could be credit application, mortgage origination fee, escrow fee, closing attorney fee, courier fee, bank processing fee, recording fee, notary fee, homeowners association transfer fee.
What is an appraisal?
All right, so appraisals are really important to the lender because it makes sure that the purchaser is not overpaying for a home. So with the lender, what they do is they send out an appraiser that evaluates the home, takes a look at other home sales in the neighborhood, and compares that to what the sales price is for this home. So if the appraisal comes back and it's low, then the buyer does get the opportunity to either walk away from the contract, they can renegotiate with the seller so that the seller reduces the price, or they can pay the difference to make up that gap.
We'll talk a lot more about appraisals, home values, and how to evaluate the financials when putting in an offer next month. But for now, let's stay focused on potential costs. The ones we've discussed so far seem manageable. So why is everyone always so surprised? Let's hear from a couple who recently purchased a home.
There were some surprise costs when we purchased our first home. Our inspection revealed some issues with the subflooring in our bathroom, and we didn't know the full cost until we actually owned our home.
Due to the current market, we had to move fast. We had to gut the entire bathroom.
And to finance it, we had to take out a personal loan. Yeah, we thought it was fine. We thought we saved enough.
Yeah.
And it felt like everything was just kind of like piling on top of itself ended up being very expensive.
Yeah, the major repairs to even some of the little stuff like lawn maintenance and just furnishings, appliances, tools.
Yeah.
It all added up really quickly.
I was under a lot of stress, a lot of sleepless nights. If I could go back and give advice to my past self, it would be to save more money and cushion that emergency fund.
So when purchasing a home, you don't want to forget about the additional monies that you need for ongoing maintenance. You have to get some furniture when you first move in. You got utilities, you got some cleaning stuff that you might have to do, ongoing landscaping and gutter cleaning. So make sure that you have that reserve fund to pay for those things on an ongoing basis after you bought your home.
What would you say to someone who feels too overwhelmed by these costs to buy a home?
Buying a home can be very overwhelming, and I say that the pros far outweigh the cons, because if you're just there renting all the time, think of it as you're just losing money on a monthly basis that you're not going to get back. So we always tell people that you want to take that leap of faith, go into it, and start building some savings and equity for yourself so that it could help move you to that next phase home, maybe your dream home. Having a real estate agent there helping you with the home buying process is so helpful because it's another perspective. So going into it, there's a lot of emotions when you're purchasing a home. And so you don't want to make quick, rash decisions or emotional decisions.
Those are some good philosophies to have going into the process. Here at Zillow, we believe that transparency is key, and that includes the uncomfortable truths about extra or hidden housing costs. And what we've mentioned here today isn't necessarily an exhaustive list. But it isn't just Zillow and agents who can help here. It can be extremely helpful to seek out professional financial advice before entering into a home purchase. That's why we've invited a Betterment certified financial planner to talk through the top tips for prospective buyers looking to save up for a home. Hey Nick, thanks for joining us. Can you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Nick Holman, Head of Financial Planning at Betterment, and want to give a big thank you to Zillow for having me here today.
So Nick, what would your top advice be to buyers looking to save up for their first home?
If you're looking to save up for your first home, first off, congratulations, it's super exciting, but it's also probably the largest purchase that you'll ever make. And because of that, every little decision along the way is magnified. And so the biggest advice that I have for really any first-time homebuyer out there is plan and plan ahead. There's a few things that are gonna be factoring in, like you're building your credit or saving up for a down payment. Those don't happen overnight.
All right, Nick, tell us, what are some common financial pitfalls around homeownership?
Yeah, two really common pitfalls that I see, especially with first-time home buyers, are one, where are you keeping the savings that you're planning on using to buy that home? I've seen a lot of clients that have come in, they're saving money in some really aggressive accounts or some really aggressive investments, and they're going to buy their first home, they're going to close on it, and the account happened to dip in value right before them. That's what you want to avoid at all costs. So if you're planning on buying a home in the next few months or even the next few years, you probably want to keep that money invested pretty safely. The second pitfall is what I call your break-even period. So buying homes can be great long-term investments, but the transaction cost to buy and to sell your house can be really high. On average, it's gonna be about 2% closing cost to buy and up to like 8% on the selling side. So when you factor that in, if you're constantly buying and selling your house, you're probably gonna be losing money on those transactions. On average, if you're in your 20s or 30s, you're probably gonna stay in your home for around 5 years or even less. If you don't plan on being in that home for at least 5 years, I would say maybe take a second to think, is now the right time for you to be buying your first home?
And what is being house poor?
Being house poor is when you just made this amazing home purchase, but now you feel broke because you just spent a lot of money on the down payment, and now your monthly housing cost is maybe way higher than it was in the past.
So tell us, what advice would you give for navigating the house poor period?
Yeah, if you can't avoid that house poor period, which is typically the first few years after you buy your home, there's a couple of things that you can at least do to try to prepare for it in advance. Think of it as like preloading some of those savings. It can be hard, but if you set aside a separate portion that you're not using for your home down payment, you can use those to fund things like, oh, now you need to do a little bit of repairs. You need to buy some more furniture because you're furnishing way more rooms than you had. You need to buy more decorations. You need to invite people over for the holidays. All of those stuff, it can add up really, really quickly. And then the second biggest thing is really just give yourself some room in your monthly budget. A lot of banks and a lot of lenders, they'll approve you for sometimes up to half of your gross income going towards housing. And if you really push up against the limit of that budget, anything that's unexpected is going to be really tough for you to manage from a monthly cash flow standpoint. So just because a bank approves you for a certain amount of a loan, maybe dial that back a little bit.
What are some tips and tricks you have for budgeting unexpected expenses?
Homeownership can have a lot of unexpected expenses, and the best way to help plan ahead for those or help prepare for when they do happen is having an emergency fund set aside. Whether you call it a rainy day fund, cash reserve, emergency fund, some money set aside for those unexpected expenses that's kept in a separate account so you don't accidentally dip into it on a regular basis, and it should be easily accessible. A good rule of thumb is have between 3 to 6 months worth of expenses set aside for when those unexpected events do occur. And one thing to keep in mind, especially for new home buyers, what may have been an adequate size emergency fund with say 3 months of expenses, you might need to top that up now that you're a homeowner.
Nick, those were some great tips. A big thank you to both Bick and Nick for joining us today. They gave us a fantastic start to understanding the upfront, ongoing, and unexpected cost of homeownership. And while we'll be covering so much more about the home buying, building, and financing process in the upcoming episodes, those eager to learn more about home costs and mortgages can hop over to Zillow's Mortgage Learning Center. There, you can find more information such as detailed articles on down payments, types of mortgages, and the steps you can take to avoid any surprises throughout your home search. So take your time. Do your research, and don't be afraid to ask questions, especially not to us here at Zillow. We're ready, and we're waiting.